Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about a bacterium that is, well, it's everywhere. It's incredibly common, surprisingly tough, and can be pretty dangerous. You've probably heard of it by its nickname, staph. So let's just kick things off with a number that might make you sit up a little straighter. 32%. That's almost a third of all healthy adults who are carrying this bacteria in their nose right now, and most of them have absolutely no idea. Think about that. In any small group, chances are someone is a carrier. This isn't some far-off threat. For a lot of us, it's a silent passenger along for the ride.
All right, so how do we get to know this hidden enemy a little better? Here's our game plan. First, we're going to meet the bacteria itself. Then we'll look at the whole spectrum of trouble it can cause, from kind of mild to really dangerous. We'll also tackle the growing threat of the superbug, MRSA. And after all that, we'll see how we fight back with diagnosis and treatment, and finally, what you can do to protect yourself.
Okay, first up, let's properly meet the staph bacteria and really understand why it's so often called the hidden enemy living right among us. So, what exactly is Staphylococcus aureus? Well, under a microscope, it's this little sphere-shaped bacterium. It's actually part of a huge family of bacteria, but this specific one, aureus, is the one we worry about the most. Why? Simply because it's the one responsible for the most serious kinds of infections. It's the family's notorious troublemaker. And this thing is a master of travel. It gets around so easily. It can spread through direct skin-to-skin contact, or just by you touching something that's contaminated. Think doorknobs, your phone, gym equipment. It can even travel through the air in tiny droplets when someone coughs or sneezes. It is incredibly good at finding new places to live. And that brings us to a really important concept, the carrier. Remember that 1 in 3 statistic? Those people are carriers. They've got the bacteria living on them, usually in their nose or on their skin, completely harmlessly. They feel fine, but they can still spread it to other people or even to a small cut on their own skin. And that's when an infection can kick off. So when does just carrying this bacteria around turn into an actual illness? Well, that brings us to the wide spectrum of staph infections. They can be anything from just a minor annoyance to something genuinely life-threatening. For most people, if they get a staph infection, it's going to start and end with the skin. This is its most common battleground. It leads to all those familiar issues like painful abscesses, nasty blisters, or just red, swollen, and tender areas of skin. And just look at the variety here. Staph can cause something as small as folliculitis. That's basically just an infected hair follicle. Or it can cause impetigo, which you see a lot in kids, with those very distinct honey-colored crusts. But it can also go deeper, forming these really painful abscesses, or boils. Or it can spread out through the skin as cellulitis, causing that widespread redness and swelling. But the skin, that's just the outer defense. The real danger, the big problem, starts when the bacteria breaks through that barrier. So what happens when staph gets into the bloodstream?
Well, this is what happens, and it's serious. Once it's in your blood, staph is no longer a local problem. It's a systemic threat. It can hitch a ride to anywhere in your body. It can cause severe pneumonia in the lungs, endocarditis, which is a really dangerous infection of the heart valves, or even osteomyelitis, a deep and stubborn bone infection.
This all leads us to maybe the biggest challenge in fighting staph today, antibiotic resistance. Now we're talking about MRSA, the superbug that shows up when our best medicines stop working.
This quote really just lays it all out there. Staph is a survivor. It's clever. Over the decades, as we've used antibiotics, many strains of staph have just evolved. They've learned how to resist the very medicines we designed to kill them. So the big takeaway here is that our main line of defense is getting weaker. And this resistance has a name you've probably heard, MRSA. It stands for methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Methicillin was one of our go-to antibiotics, a type of penicillin. MRSA are the strains of staph that can now shrug it off, which makes these infections so much harder and more complicated to treat.
And it's important to realize that MRSA kind of has two different faces. On one side, you've got hospital-acquired MRSA. This is the kind you can pick up in a healthcare setting, and it's often a really tough bug resistant to lots of different antibiotics. But then there's community-acquired MRSA, which can infect perfectly healthy people just out and about in their daily lives, usually causing those serious skin infections.
So, with a threat like this, how do we actually fight back? Well, that brings us to diagnosis and treatment.
Diagnosing a staph infection often starts pretty simply, with a doctor just looking at it. But for anything more serious, samples of blood or infected fluid get sent to the lab. And there, they do two critical things. They confirm it is staph, and then they run what are called susceptibility tests. That's how we find out which specific antibiotics will actually work against that particular strain. For deep infections, they might even use X-rays or CT scans to see if it's gotten into the bones.
Treatment is really a multi-pronged attack. Choosing the right antibiotic based on those lab tests is absolutely key. For some mild skin issues, a simple ointment might do the trick. If there's a boil or an abscess, it often needs to be physically drained to get the pus out. And in the most severe cases, like an infected medical device, surgery might be the only option to get the source of the infection out for good.
But you know what they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So for our last section, let's talk about the simple but incredibly powerful steps you can take to protect yourself in the first place. And the best part is, this all comes down to a few really simple habits. Number 1, and this is the big one, wash your hands, often, with soap and water. It is the single most effective defense we have. Number 2, keep any cuts or wounds covered. A simple bandage is like a shield. 3, don't share personal items, towels, razors, that kind of thing. And 4, if you have a skin infection, be really careful about handling food.
Look, I know we keep saying it, but it really cannot be overstated. This quote says it all. Thoroughly washing your hands is your #1 weapon. It's a simple habit that protects not just you, but everyone you come into contact with.
So let's leave you with a question to think about. Now that you know how easily this bacteria can spread, and also how simple prevention can be, what's one small habit you're going to change starting today to keep yourself and the people around you just a little bit safer?
We really hope this was a helpful breakdown for you. If you found this information valuable, please show your support.